if everybody's okay with it, then I'll share it. But I won't post it one person. That's really cute. That's cute. Yep. Okay. I love the bunny ears. Okay, we're good?
Mm-hmm. Voluntold. What? So nice to see so many friendly faces in the audience. So good evening. Welcome to another coveted position on the agenda. When we presented at B-Sides Nashville, we were right after lunch, so I think there's something in the presentation gods against us. But I'm very honored to have our presentation selected for Derbycon. This is my first time to be at Derbycon, and it's a great honor to be here as a speaker. In the 7-8 years that I've been in the community, I have really noticed that a lot of people devote their time and their energy and their intellectual properties into the community just to make the community a better place. And my background is in recruitment marketing, and I was really curious as to why people were not using the skills and the networking that they do here in the community to advance their career. So I'm very honored to have many people up here on the stage with me who do a lot of volunteering in the community, and I've asked them to come and share their stories of how they've been volunteering in the community, what they've been doing, but also how do they use it to develop their career? How many steps have they taken to use that experience in the community to be able to go to the next step of their career? So I have the honor of having Megan Wu, Cindy Jones, Kat Seymour, and Kirsten Renner, who is a recruiter who is very involved in the community, and she's going to provide a perspective on the content shared by each one of our volunteers on how the candidates should be sharing this information on their resume or in their social media profile or during an interview process. So I'm going to have each one of the presenters give a little bit of background of who they are, where they work, and the volunteer efforts that they do. So Megan?
Hi, my name is Megan Wu. I'm on Twitter as Totenka. I am a senior security analyst over at Urbane Security. And what do I do? A lot. I have spoken at Derbycon, DEFCON, RSA, ISC Square Congress, Nauticon. For those of you who remember Nauticon, yeah. And then volunteer-wise, I volunteered doing the Proving Ground. I was a co-chair for B-Sides Las Vegas's Proving Ground, where we matched mentors with mentees for their first presentations. And also, I am the department lead for workshops for DEFCON.
Cindy?
Hi, I'm Cindy Jones. My voice is almost gone because I volunteered a lot of cons as well, this being one of them. And during registration and playing security for the first time ever, which is a trip, I got to talk to a lot of people, and that's one of the things, that's how my weekend is gone. I also work for B-Sides Las Vegas. I do volunteer work there as running the registration crew for that conference, as well as I'm lucky enough to be Megan's second in charge for workshops at DEFCON, amongst many other smaller things. So.
And B-Sides San Antonio?
B-Sides San Antonio. Well, I organized B-Sides San Antonio. I guess I kind of started it, and then I handed it off to a wonderful organizer afterwards who's done amazing things. We'll talk about that later.
Kat?
Hi, I'm Kat Seymour. I am a Red Team analyst at Bank of America. I haven't done as many cool things as these guys in the broader community at large. I have spoken at multiple conferences, and as far as what I actually do to help volunteer, a lot of it involves stuff that happens at my company, working with a lot of candidates. I work a lot with the college students and the high school students, and I introduce them to this field. I mentor a lot of them, whether they come work for us or not. I encourage them to stay in contact with me, and I keep in contact with a lot of different people at the cons and help put people in touch. So I'm kind of more of a behind the scenes type person when it comes to volunteering.
So Kirsten, you want to stand up here? Because you're behind the podium. So Kirsten Renner.
The dress is shorter than I thought it was going to be, so I'm going to hide like behind the podium. So I'm Kirsten Renner. I've been recruiting since 2000, which is a long time. Been in InfoSec since about 10 years. Been specifically in the InfoSec conference community since 2010. The volunteering started with workshops and mentoring and helping people write resumes and learn how to do interviews, and mostly under the guidance of this one. We've done a lot of small conferences together all around the country, and for the last 5 years I have a whole other personality. I'm mostly known as for my contributions to the car hacking village, getting it started 5 years ago. People think my name is Krenner now, so
yeah.
That's it.
Just hold on. My name's Kathleen Smith. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of a company called CyberSec Jobs. Those wristbands that you saw in the swag bag, was my idea after a few bottles of wine sometime about 8 months ago. And I'm really lucky that my company was willing to send it to whatever conference ever asked for it. I am also the founder of an organization called Recruit DC, which is the largest recruiting organization in the Washington, D.C. area. We do best practices networking conferences. I'm on the planning committee of 8 different B-Sides, and I'm also with these lovely ladies. I'm on the staff for B-Sides Las Vegas, and I run Higher Ground. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about sort of community involvement. Why do you do it? I mean, other than getting the t-shirt, why would you do it? In specific, we're going to talk about conference management, presenting, and competitions. And what do you want to look for when you're going to be sharing this information with a recruiter? How are you going to present this so that they're not thinking that you're just playing all the time? We're also going to touch on some of the things such as how do you engage your employer? Do you want to engage them or not? What are some of the skills that you've learned? And handling the stress of volunteering, where we're talking a lot at this conference about stress and mental health. And one thing that we find within volunteering is it's another job. And in doing that other job, many of us are then working 2 or 3 different jobs and not being able to handle that stress. And finally, I'm going to share some of the survey results. We did a global community survey over the summer that sort of talked to people as far as how much volunteering they did, what kind of skills did they learn, and what are some of the things that they thought that they should share with other people. So some of the first survey results were what the skills were learned that people thought they didn't think that they were going to learn much at volunteering other than being able to help out. But a lot of them learned collaborative skills, communication skills, organizational skills, and also a lot of skills into time management, delegation, workforce management. A lot of people don't realize that employers do support people being in the community volunteering. This is a great new trend that's been happening. A lot of great companies have really stepped forward and say they're going to support their staff and going out into the community. And we're seeing a growing trend that said that their employers support them. They provide paid time off, but also that volunteer support is something that candidates are really looking at when they're going to a new employer. And I really recommend that any time that you're in an interview process, that you definitely share with them the volunteering that you're going to be doing and that you want to do, and ask them what their policy is on that. That might tell you what kind of culture the company is that you're going to, and understand if they see the value of being part of community management. So, Cindy, we're going to put you on the spot first. You want to come up? So tell us a little bit more about conference management, how you got into it, and how did you engage your employer and handle all of that with B-Side San Antonio?
So B-Side San Antonio was not my first conference. I wasn't just going, yes, I'm going to set up a conference. As anything else, you start getting involved. For me, it was getting involved with an idea, which is what the B-Sides entire series represented to me. And that was easily accessible educational opportunities for the community, put on by the community, supported by the community, and paid for strictly by sponsors. It was basically free for all intents and purposes. So that was something I really believed in. I was fortunate enough to be a part of the second B-Sides in Las Vegas, and then I found out, oh wow, they're in Austin too. So I went down there and I came across walked in and got there a little early, and they were setting things up, and I said, hey, how can I help? Boy, that was a crazy question to ask. I ended up becoming deeply involved with the B-Sides Texas idea, which included B-Sides San Antonio, or B-Sides DFW, B-Sides Austin, and eventually they talked me into doing B-Sides San Antonio. I was lucky. I was really lucky. The people who ran B-Sides DFW, Michelle Klinger-Diami, and Michael Goff, who's roaming around here talking somebody's ear off here at the Derbycon, they were the two leaders of those two conferences. And I was very fortunate in the regard that they were willing to hold my hand and help explain to me how to go ahead and get this thing set up, above and beyond what I think a lot of organizers have the opportunity to be able to go ahead and get advice to get. So that was awesome. But I took it all on myself. I tried doing the committee thing. That first year didn't work out so well. The only thing I was able to initially assign out is one guy had to find the locally brewed beer. That was his one job. 2 months later, he moved to Virginia. That didn't work out so well. So once again, so it was one of those things where I kind of felt like everything was falling to me. And it worked out okay. I had the guidance from the folks, Michael and Michelle saying, okay, you probably want to do this right about now because it takes a while to get lanyards from China. You want to go ahead and do this right about now because it takes, this is who you want to go source this with. And so I learned a lot of skills through doing that and learning how to time things appropriately. That's kind of where it all started, and it became a little bit of a habit. So B-Sides San Antonio came to fruition in 2013, thank you. That is Stephen. He is the one who I was able to hand that off to after 3 years. And he obviously has a better memory for dates than I do, which is why it was great to have that support when I was first starting off.
So when you started B-Sides San Antonio, who were you working with, and how did you share with your employer what this was?
So at that time, I was actually doing DoD contracting. For those of you who have done any kind of contract work with the government or with really any contract agency, I'm sure you're aware, they don't give you a lot of time off. I'm in San Antonio. My bosses were all in DC. Not only were my bosses all in DC, but they were rotating. I mean, every year I'd have a different boss. So this is a conversation I got very used to having was, hey, by the way, when around, the first week of May, I'm going to be really slammed. I'm probably going to need some time off from that too. In addition to, by the way, again, in the summer, I'm gone for a week and a half to Vegas because I'm doing security conference work there, as well as et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So knowing that I was going to be going in the hole with vacation right off the bat and not having any actual personal time off left over was difficult at best. Trying to explain, if I got sick, I was kind of hosed. There wasn't a lot I could do. So, but how did I bring it up to them? I just kind of laid it out for them. This is something that's important to me. And by the way, if you'd like to have a sponsorship opportunity, I can provide you with that. Never panned out, not once. So I'm thinking that was just my bad salesmanship. I don't know. I learned a lot of skills. Salesmanship wasn't one of them.
So what were some of the other skills? You were doing registration, but it sounds like you were managing a small company, personnel and
basically.
Finance.
Luckily B-Sides has enough of a reputation to where the sponsors were coming in, right? This is all for San Antonio. The sponsors were coming in regardless. I was able to hit up a few well-known contacts. I also was relying on the networking that I had done at the other B-Sides events. And B-Sides Vegas and B-Sides Austin, the leadership of those in Dallas, those leaders were able to point me in the right direction to talk to the appropriate people, to get the money. Cause that's what it boils down to, right? You can't run the thing without the money. Making contacts in the community. Our first event was at a place called Geekdom. It's a co-working space, and it's kind of promoted by Rackspace. Is that right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, the employees founded it. It wasn't really it's not part of Rackspace, but it's very closely aligned with it. But so they gave us the space for free. That doesn't happen. You're planning a conference and you have a free space. This is crazy. Well, from that first year on, I was managing to find ways to get that space for free every single year. So for 3 years, I didn't pay a dime for a space. My budget was a whopping 10 grand. That's how much I budgeted for, and that's exactly what I spent. I think I had $3 left over each year. So money management. I learned how to balance, get those books balanced, make sure that I had enough to cover the speaker gifts that were the last minute purchase item because you're never quite sure if you could afford those. To make sure everybody had lunch every day, working with catering companies, working with, sourcing various pieces of swag, t-shirts. Oh my gosh, the t-shirts. All that stuff, so.
Well, why don't we let Kirsten share? So Kirsten, Cindy comes to you as a candidate and she doesn't share with you that she's been part of conference management. All of a sudden in a conversation, it comes up that she's been doing all this conference management. How should she present her conference management to you? It's not going to be an entire separate resume. Is it going to be on her social media profile? Is it going to be part of the interviews? What are you going to be looking for?
So I have a unique perspective because I've done that on a mini basis. It's also crisis management also. But it is an exercise. And it takes another person. You either need to stand in front of a mirror and do it, or you need to talk to somebody who understands. But you have to learn how to translate the things that you've done, tell the story, and let somebody hear you say it, and tell you how that translates into a quantifiable skill, so a bona fide occupational qualification, right? What did you do? You were a team leader. So you have leadership skills. You didn't even realize it. There's time management. She was talking just now about, having to get supplies and having to manage a budget. And I heard her say 30 different things. But is it on her resume? So it takes educating both sides. You have to educate the recruiting staff and you have to educate the management or the hiring managers as well. A couple employers ago, I was flown out to their headquarters to speak to their board of directors to help them understand I was going on my own time to the conferences. Why is she going there? What's happening there? Can we put our voice, can we have her shake our banner while she's there as well? What's the return going to be? That's a whole other area where you have to, on both sides, get the support. You have to get the support for your time to be there and for them to give you the money that you need, the resources that you need. So you have to educate both sides. So when you are the person who's been here, whether you are doing the volunteering or even just an attendee, the different things that you participated in. When I was doing the workshop yesterday, the resume workshop and the interview training, as people were telling me the story, I didn't read the resume. I said, I'm not going to read your resume. I'm going to ask you questions. And then I'm going to see, why don't I see that on your resume? Probably it happened 5 or 10 times every person I talked to. I'd go, oh, you were the lead? Oh, you built the actual team? Oh, you were in charge of this whole, why is none of these things are on your resume? You told me this whole other story. So
where should it be on the resume? I mean, is it a separate page? Where would you recommend it be?
So without digressing too far off of the original question, start your resume off with bluff, with the bottom line up front. I am tell me because I don't know, and assume that the recruiter doesn't know. And you have 3 to 5 seconds to get their attention. I am and I want to be and you can change the end of that sentence over and over and over again. Do it in 1 or 2 sentences. Do it very quickly. Cause me to want to keep reading down and highlight those things out. Don't put it in a paragraph, put it in bullets and capture all those things that you did. And make sure that when you're describing, I attended this or I organized this, please put bullets underneath of it. And I was in charge of, or I created this solution. She's a solutions architect. She's a leader. She's managing resources. She's managing people. Those are the things that she said and didn't even realize she was saying it, or, prospectively.
Thank you.
Sure.
So competition. So Kat, you got your job through a competition, and tell us a little bit more about how you got your experience and your job, because a lot of people say, I don't have the experience. Well, you got experience a very different way.
I did. I started off in security. I was a triage manager, and I managed a large call for a security incident. And I was able to connect with somebody who was in the information security field, and they saw my passion and my love for this, and they said, come work for me. And I said, I have no experience. That's the story of my life, is I have no experience. I don't know is always the number one answer that I have in my interviews. And he said, it doesn't matter. You have a passion. I can teach you all the skills. And that sort of set my whole expectation for working in security is, oh, if I can demonstrate how much I love this stuff, I will be given opportunities. And I started off hunting. I was a blue team member. And in order to get better at my hunting job, I started to participate in Capture the Flags. Our company offers an internal Capture the Flag competition, and I said, hey, I want to learn more about how attackers work so that I can better understand how to find them. And so I started to play in their Capture the Flag. And I didn't know what I was doing. So I reached out to the people I'd never met before, the big scary red team, and I said, hey, can you teach me some of this stuff? Can I learn from you? After the competitions were over, I'd go over the flags with them. And this accomplished two things. It helped me develop my skill set, but it also helped me build the relationships with the people who I someday wanted to hopefully work with. And after it was 18 months. It was 18 months from my first Capture the Flag to being offered a job on the red team. And the way that this happened is every time there was a CTF, I would spend, my poor family would sacrifice me for an entire month 4 times a year. They knew when CTF came, that was it. There was just Capture the Flag and work. And that was that dedication and the time that I put into it that showed the manager who was putting on the CTF my dedication to this. It showed my ability to learn. I actually was offered the job when I started beating the rest of the red team. So it was a great way for me to demonstrate my skill set. And as my career went on, I found that I was able to gather the information that I needed. When you play Capture the Flag, if you play in a team competition sort of way, even better things happen. You're exposed to people who are, a lot of times on your team, you have people who have different skill sets. So we have a forensic person and a malware analyst and red teamers, and each has their own expertise. And when you're playing together to solve the problems, you have a problem that you're trying to solve, you get to work through it, and you get to see how these people work through it. So you build the relationships, you gain a lot of skills, and you have a lot of fun doing it.
Mm-hmm. So what are some of the things that you recommend that students do as far as their competitions? I mean, if you're going to go to a lot of competitions, a recruiter's not going to want to really hear that. Do you use any of that experience in the competitions, in your interviews, or explaining to your management why you're going to so many competitions?
Yes. Well, in my case, so if you're not just interviewing, if you're internal and you want to demonstrate the value of what you're doing, what I did when I started playing, because I don't care who you are, you're going to be thinking about those flags during the day when you're working anyway. Your brain's going to be somewhat distracted. So I would take what I learned and I would write it up and present it to my management. And I would also present it to my current manager, my new manager, as a way for him to show the value of what he was actually putting on. But then I showed my manager the value he was getting out of it. And what I tell the kids that I work with is I say, when you're talking about what you do, find a way to format either a question that you ask at the end that opens up a door for you to describe some of the skills that you learn, or answer the questions that are given to you in a way that allows you to say, maybe you don't know the answer to that question, but you could say, well, I was working on this Capture the Flag with these other teammates and I was able to learn something similar. You have to be careful with that. I just learned recently with an interview I got to witness that there is actually too much of doing that. So be careful not to fill every question with, well, I don't know the answer, but here's 15 other things that show what I know. That's tiresome. So.
Okay, thank you. So Kirsten, do you only care about if people won the CTF, or what do you care about if someone shares with you that they were part of a CTF?
I love that question. because I would prefer to hear about what you failed at and what you lost at, because you learned a lot more that day. So please, if you ever competed, make sure that it's on your resume. And what do I see when I'm a recruiter and I have resume fatigue, I'm going through many resumes. What you're showing me, the difference between the person who states that they took the time to be part of a competition. Obviously, number one, they're a team player. I know that right off the bat. They know how to collaborate. They know how to be a part of a team and not try to do it all themselves. So I already know that as soon as I find out that they were in the competition, especially if they've done more than one. They didn't just do it and suck at it. They kept trying. Another thing that I know right away, all right, let's say I just met her, or I've never met her and I saw that she was in this competition. You know what I automatically know about her? I know that there is two different types of workers related to what I'm saying. There's the one that clocks in at clock-in time and then clocks out, and that's okay because that's all you're required to do. And there's that person who never really clocks out. There's that person who texts themselves a message. Do you text yourself at 3 o'clock in the morning? Do you get amazing thoughts at 3 o'clock in the morning when you should be asleep? She does, doesn't she? I see your family.
Yeah.
I see your family. I know. That's the difference. So I'm not saying if you've never been in a CTF, you suck, but it's just different flavors of people. So I know automatically as a recruiter, and my recruiters are trained to know. My recruiting team is trained to look for. If you took the time to do this, and I coach students to do it too, start in high school, do it in college, be a part of a competition, have that learning experience. And the best thing that can happen to you in that experience is to lose or to fail, because you're going to learn.
And it's really important that a lot of people take the time after a competition to just write yourself some notes, because you're going to want to have some kind of content anytime you're part of an interview or you're trying to look for a way to discuss the things that you've learned. But you're not going to remember every single competition that you were part of. So keep a competition journal. What was the challenge? What did you learn? What did you fail at? What are the different things that can make a difference as far as the communication skills you learned? Because you're always going to want to be able to showcase those skills by showing your problem-solving skills when you're having an interview with a recruiter. So presentations. So Megan, presentations are easy, right? You just get up here, you throw up a few Google images, it's no problem.
Cat pictures. That's
cat,
all.
Cat,
That's
cat
all you
memes
need.
all the time. So a lot of people think that getting up here on stage is really easy and that there's just a small group of us who get to do it. But it's really a lot more behind the scenes. You want to talk about behind the scenes, what you do with presenting?
Yeah. So a little bit of background about me. My first conference was Derbycon 15. Never been to a security conference before. I didn't have any job even related to IT. I was still in college trying to figure out how I was going to break in because I loved what everybody was doing because it's a huge puzzle, right? And then I saw all of these presenters sharing what they've learned and how impassioned they were. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to share what I know and what I'm interested in. And maybe other people are interested in it too, or feel like they could learn something from it. So the next year, I got some friends, and we gave my first presentation. I think they had spoken other places before, but it's nerve-wracking. I don't remember most of that day because I switched between being really, really drunk and throwing up from anxiety. And it doesn't get much better, even if you're sober during it, because you're just wondering like, okay, I only have so much time to get my message across. I have to keep it interesting because our attention spans are getting shorter and shorter. And don't get distracted by the person who leaves in the middle of your talk, which is really hard because other people might be nodding and really feeling it. But then that one person who walks out, now you guys are going to feel too guilty to leave our panel.
Ulterior motive.
Right.
So do you want to walk us through sort of call for proposals, submitting a proposal, what have you done, and are all of your presentations accepted, or how often are you?
I have gotten really comfortable with rejection. Some of them are really nice and like, we're sorry, we were really interested. And then others give you feedback like, this sucks, know your audience better. So it's all kind of a learning process, right? And it kind of depends on who's on the board, what kind of talk you're presenting, where you're submitting the talk to. Also, I'm an over-preparer and kind of a perfectionist because I'm just so nervous and anxious about, are they going to like this? So I have a detailed outline. I read and reread the submission instructions. And then sometimes I have my presentation, at least the outline, done and created. And then I fill it out more as time goes on. And I'm like, oh man, this would really fit in well, or people might be interested in this. And from a job perspective, I think presenting has been really beneficial for me because I've gotten better with time management because I have so much time, like maybe 2 months on a good day, where between acceptance and go. So that's not a lot of prep time to bare your soul and open yourself up for criticism about something that you find really interesting.
And how do you pick the presentations that you're going to do? I know a lot of people think that, you work for a great company who supports you, but if you're going to have to get approvals, if you're going to be representing your company, I know that, when I made this presentation last summer, we all got the message that RSA had just closed their presentations, and we were like, wait a minute, call for proposals already was open and done. So talk a little bit about that time management. Right now some of us are filling out proposals for the spring, summer, so talk a little bit about that.
So I generally start with a general idea, right? Generally. And I go to my boss and I say, hey, I would like to give a presentation about X, Y, or Z. Right now, I'm really interested in psychology and how that intersects with security. So I went up to my boss and I'm like, hey, I want to give a presentation on how psychology can help us do user awareness training better. And they were like, cool, just let us know if you need any help. When I had previous jobs, they wanted to see the presentation. It kind of depends on your employer. And that kind of keeps you honest and on track when it comes to getting your slides done on time if your employer wants to see them ahead of time. And I learned early that if I was interested in speaking and continuing to speak, just like volunteering, I made sure that my employers knew right off the bat, like, hey, I've presented in the past. I put it on my resume. This is something I'm going to continue doing. Are you okay with that? And I've had interviews where they're just like, no. We are very tight-lipped about what we do. If there's any overlap whatsoever, you can't do it. And I'm like, okay, thanks for your time. Bye. And that's fine because an interview is a two-way street.
Now, have you ever presented and not, talk a little bit about you're presenting and people know where you work from. I noticed that a lot of people in the community sometimes present and they don't let anyone know who they work for. Do you do that?
So if I don't get permission... When I know it's like one of those topics where they might not like what I say or necessarily agree or it doesn't align with the company values, I wouldn't necessarily recommend doing what I did, but I would sometimes give the talk, not let the company know that I was giving the talk, not mention the company, make sure that I stated that it was something I did on my personal time, not with company resources, et cetera, and that generally helped smooth the apology over a little bit.
So Kirsten, talk to us a little bit about how you would see someone who presented and all of these things, competitions, volunteering, presenting. Are you as a recruiter going to think, I don't want to hire this person because they're spending so much time out of the office? Or are they things that you're interested in, especially, the presenting? Are you comfortable with someone who presents a lot?
So, side note, quote me, the number one qualifier for every position that's listed everywhere on the planet is a willingness and an ability. I don't care as much about and hardly actually look at your certs and your education. Sorry for all, that doesn't mean you wasted your time, but I don't look at it. Your willingness and your ability. Can you be taught, and will you go the extra mile? And again, for me, just having had the experience, and I do teach this to my recruiters, and people find out, especially when the hiring managers and the recruiters communicate, and you realize how much the hiring managers that have these experiences value what you do in the community. Well, think about it, your ability to present. You got to put a slide deck together. I can't tell you how much time I spend just as a little tiny director of a little tiny department in a not huge company. I happen to be blessed that my company encourages innovation and that sort of thing, but a lot of companies don't. They want you to stay in your lane, right? So it's really hard putting a slide deck together. You really do stress about how many kittens to put on there. Do you have a question?
Yeah, so given that, would you consider it to be damaging to one's career to choose to work for an employer who does not allow public presentation?
I think you have to look at that on an individual basis. It's not going to damage the individual. Was that the question? It's not going to damage you if your company won't let you, but I would personally advise hypothetical you to ask yourself what you care about, and I promise there's somebody out there that will support you. There is a company out there that will support you. I promise. There's 10 jobs for every one candidate now. I just made that up, but that's how it feels. Probably knows she does the actual studies and she has the actual data, but I'm probably not that far off. Yes? Absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
So you have to stay with.
So the question is, do you see it as a detriment that a company that you're interviewing with does not want you to do any public presentations? Did I recap that correctly? I'm getting a nod. Okay.
If you're just if you're at the interview level, right, and they don't seem to encourage something that you're passionate about, you're going to run into that over and over and over again. She called it a two-way street. Absolutely. Please interview the people that are interviewing you. Ask them. People are naturally self-interested and they want to tell you stories. So ask them about a personal thing that they can testify to, right? Ask them to tell you a story. You're going to catch them off guard. They're not going to be prepared for it, and then you're going to find things out in that moment, right? So it's not going to. It's hurting them. They need you. Right now, it is the candidates market, and those employers need you. And if they can't understand what you're passionate about or what you're spending your time on, and they can't value the extra oomph it takes for you to take that time. I'm on volunteer time right now, not getting paid, right? I'm doing this because it's fulfilling. I'm doing this because it matters. I'm doing this because it's helpful, because we're going to establish a relationship, right? That's awesome. You have.
So the question for our audience on the video is, you've gone through the interview process, you've shared with them that you volunteer, that you present, that you're part of conferences, it's part of the company culture to support community involvement, but you find that your immediate line manager, your immediate manager does not support that. That's a sticky wicket, and that will happen because many times, even though it's a company mission to be part of the community, there are going to be individual managers that are looking at the bottom line and that they know what they're being evaluated on, and they're not going to see the value of being out in the community. My recommendation is similar to what everyone here on the stage has said, is learn how to sell to your immediate manager what the value is, what the brand value is of being involved in the community, the relationships that you're building that can be part of the talent pipeline. The fact, Kirsten was just saying it the other day, that because she's out in the community, more people know about her company. There are a lot of companies out there that not everyone knows about. And understanding that they want you to have specific skills, and those skills are going to be developed when you're out in the community, not only the technical skills, but the non-technical skills, and that we are in an industry that is all about continuous learning. And the fact that you're putting yourself into a situation where you're continuously learning, you're bringing that back. Now, at the end of the day, that still might be enough. And as Kirsten said, there's a lot of jobs out there.
There are. So for me, when I hear that story, the proverbial story, that felt like a bait and switch, right? You told me during the interview that you cared about my blah, 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 blah. And then when it got down to it, I wasn't supported by my manager. So either the company is going to back up what they claim. Is that their core value? Is that what they really stand for? Or do they just put their logo up? Do they just pay money? Or are they willing to do a lot more than that, right? Is it just about the logo? Is it just about attention? Or do they actually care about their employees? Don't tell me, or don't tell the employees that you care about the mission, that you care about the customer, or that you care about the bottom line if you don't care about the employees, because they're the ones that get you there, right?
Right. So, interestingly enough, what we have seen within this presentation and throughout the conference, that we all have a lot of stress. One of the things that came back from the global survey was that 98% of the people who volunteer say it's very, very fulfilling. However, 55% say that they feel some kind of stress, either physical stress or psychological stress, anxiety, headaches, backaches. We for some reason are killing ourselves doing this. At the same time, 94% said they believe that this has a positive impact on the community. And I find that very interesting that I've been in a variety of different industries. This is the only industry that I know that we talk about the public image of the industry as being hackers and they're negative, and we don't see the positive side, whereas so many people within the community are stepping forward, volunteering, and they know that they're having a positive impact. They're having a positive impact on their companies, and they're also having a positive impact on those who are in the community. But I wanted each one of the panelists to sort of talk about how you manage the stress, what situations do you get yourself into? So Cindy, why don't you start?
Oh, yeah.
Why don't you start with your favorite word, yes?
No. That's really hard to say. No is really hard to say. Background. I spent a lot of time at conferences learning, and that was awesome. And I think that's absolutely what conferences are for everybody. I also was at a point in my life where I needed to feel like I was giving back something to the community that had given me so much. And I was completely a taker in lots of different areas, but that's a different story. But I was taking all this knowledge and I was feeling really good about what I was learning. It was promoting my career, it was promoting me in making me feel better about what I was doing, which was then enabling me to go ahead and move up and up in my career path. So part of the volunteering aspect of it, of the aspects of volunteering that attracted me, was the ability to give something back. I really, really liked that. I gave a lot back. I gave way too much back sometimes. I don't say no often enough. It's problematic. When the first time Kathleen asked me if I wanted to be a part of this panel, I work for Rapid7. Great company, super involved with the community. They help me get to any conference any conference I speak at. Most of the conferences that I volunteer at, they assist me in getting there, making sure whether my airfare or something is paid, which is amazing. And that's not going to be the case all the time, but in this case, I'm very fortunate that it is. But so Kathleen asked me if I wanted to be a part of this panel, I said, I work for this great company that's so involved with the community. Let me go ahead and talk to, the head of our marketing group, or our people strategy group, and find out what it was and how they ended up getting involved with the community. And they gave me the history about Metasploit and everything else, because I really wasn't completely clear with that. So during the course of this conversation, I brought up the thought about, what if we don't say no? What if we say yes to everything? Where do we draw that line? Are there any tool sets out there that are available for people to maybe learn how to say no and not overcommit themselves and not get themselves in a position where they are entirely stressed out of their brains? And the people strategy lead said, you know, Cindy, we don't, but that's a really neat project. Would you be interested in doing that? Now I'm in charge of this project at Rapid 7. So, yeah, we don't say no often enough, and that's a problem. Being able to weigh what we want to be involved in and decide where we want to spend our time, that's also something you really need to consider when you're looking at your options.
So, Kat, you want to talk a little bit about, how many competitions, how you say no, how you say yes? How do you evaluate it all, or do you do it all?
So as far as competitions go, I told you before that it depends what system I brought with me. So if I brought my work system, then I'll play in all of them. But if I brought my personal system, I'm going to limit what CTFs I play in. Take from that what you will. But I also have the issue of saying yes to too many speaking engagements. And I found last year that I was unpacking from my suitcase into the washer and repacking from the dryer. And the way that happened is that I had lots of different people asking me, and you want to please everyone. And I got on a plane to get to Derbycon, and the lady asked me where I was going to check in for my ticket, and I said, I have no idea. And that was kind of a wake-up moment to me, is that I am now traveling so much. I have wonderful children at home, and I am traveling so much that I don't even know where I am or where I'm going. And at that point, I decided to kind of take a step back and do things that allowed me to do it more remotely, work behind the scenes. And competitions are good for that, too, because I can play a lot of I have a CTF team. We're Unicorn Poo. Yay! And unicorn! One of the things that we do is we participate together. We welcome everybody. Everybody comes and plays. And when we're not able to attend conferences, if they're allowed to, if there aren't strict rules, let's say, no outside help, we'll share a lot of the questions that can be shared in our channels so that everybody can continue to participate outside of having to go to the con. So that's one way that we help each other still learn, still be involved, and not have to actually travel as much as we do.
So Megan, just a few quick points on how you balance the stress.
So, well, I wrap myself up in a blanket burrito and watch Netflix until the deadline comes up.
Okay.
No. Just kidding. Sometimes. I rely really heavily on lists. I have found through trial and error that if I have lists dedicated to, okay, I need to get this done, and here are my milestones, and what do I need to do to get to those milestones, that really helps me. But I'm also really type A, so that doesn't work for everybody. Oh, that was weird. Okay. Also, over time, I felt like I was, just like everybody else, it seems, was saying yes too much. And it actually got to a point where I was feeling burnt out and didn't want to come and, share as much. And when I dread seeing my friends, that's usually a warning sign. So I was more picky about, okay, do I really want to give this talk at this place? Or do I just want to show up as an attendee? Because sometimes you give back by sitting at the bar and talking to random people, right? And learning from them that way. So I took more time sitting on the sidelines, talking with folks, was more picky about what I spoke about, when I spoke about it, and also when and where I was volunteering. This was my first year not volunteering as co-chair for Proving Ground, and that was hard, especially watching the chat from the sidelines while they were doing the planning. I'm like, oh, well, I wouldn't do that. Oh, no, it's not my baby anymore. Gotta give it up. So that saying no can be harder than saying yes sometimes.
So in wrapping up, I just wanted to say that a lot of times we hear the term, rage quit, and we hear that we, sort of gave up on something. I really use the volunteer opportunities to sort of work on things that I don't have the opportunity to work on when I'm in my professional life. My example is in a board that I was part of, I kept beating heads with one of my board members. He and I just went at it tooth and nail every single time we had a board meeting. And I noticed that I was doing that in work as well. And then I realized that this person just wanted to be heard. And once I closed my mouth and let that person do their talking, our relationship moved to the next level. So it was really great from a professional development standpoint, using my volunteer opportunities to be able to improve what I did in my professional life. So I want to thank you all for coming here. Thank you so much for giving back to the community. If you are interested in the Global Community Survey, I'm happy to send you a copy of it. Just email me. We will be putting together as a formal presentation later on. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Especially for people that must take a 6-hour flight to go to events like this, like Derbycon. And I'm talking about fighting from developing countries like mine, Dominican Republic. And how can those people create a competitive profile? Because we don't have like the flag, we don't have events like this. So, recommendation.
So if I can repeat the question, how do people